Thank you for listening to News and Research English Podcast. I am a host, David.
And I am Catherine.
This podcast introduces latest news and research papers by Catherine and me. Referred articles are from the study of medicine, psychology, or natural science. Scientific articles definitely improve your English knowledge and become a good practice for TOEFL. And knowing latest news can broaden your perspective of everyday life.
If you like this channel, please subscribe and hit the like button. Let's get it started. First article. In a recent study, a research team from Guangdong Provincial People's Hospital and several collaborating institutions developed an artificial intelligence system designed to improve the diagnosis of suspicious breast lesions on MRI scans. The researchers reported that their system can significantly reduce false positive diagnoses, which are cases where a lesion appears cancerous but later turns out to be benign. The team created a model called the BI-RADS 4 Lesions Analysis System, or BL4AS. This system analyzes breast MRI images and helps doctors determine whether suspicious lesions are likely to be malignant or benign. The researchers trained the AI using MRI data from more than 2,600 patients and over 2,800 lesions collected from multiple hospitals. Their results showed that the AI achieved high diagnostic accuracy and demonstrated stronger specificity than human radiologists alone. In other words, the system was particularly effective at correctly identifying lesions that were not cancerous. Even more interestingly, when radiologists used the AI system as a decision support tool, their diagnostic performance improved. The number of false positive diagnoses dropped significantly, suggesting that AI assistance could reduce unnecessary biopsies and improve patient care.
That's really interesting. So the main benefit of this AI system isn't just detecting cancer. It's helping doctors avoid unnecessary procedures.
Exactly. Breast MRI is a very sensitive imaging technique. It's extremely good at detecting abnormalities, which is why it's commonly used for high-risk patients. However, that sensitivity comes with a downside. MRI often identifies lesions that look suspicious but are actually harmless.
And when doctors see something suspicious, they usually recommend a biopsy, right?
Yes. A biopsy is currently the gold standard for confirming whether a lesion is malignant, but many biopsies ultimately reveal benign tissue. That means patients undergo an invasive procedure, experience anxiety, and incur additional medical costs, even though they never had cancer in the first place.
So this study focuses specifically on BI-RADS Category 4 lesions, right?
Yes. The BI-RADS system is a classification method used by radiologists to describe breast imaging findings. Category 4 lesions are considered suspicious for malignancy, so doctors usually recommend a biopsy. However, the probability of cancer in Category 4 lesions ranges widely, from around 2% to as high as 95%. Because the category is so broad, it can be difficult for doctors to determine which lesions truly require immediate intervention.
That must make clinical decision-making pretty challenging.
Absolutely. Radiologists often have to rely on subtle imaging patterns, their experience, and sometimes their intuition when making these decisions.
So how exactly did the researchers train this AI system?
The team collected a large dataset of breast MRI scans from several medical centers. These images included dynamic contrast-enhanced MRI sequences, which capture multiple phases of contrast enhancement over time. After a contrast agent is injected into the bloodstream, cancerous tissue tends to absorb and release the contrast in a characteristic pattern. By analyzing these dynamic changes, doctors can obtain clues about whether a lesion might be malignant.
So the AI analyzes how the lesion behaves over time, not just how it looks in a single image.
Exactly. That temporal information is very important. Cancerous lesions often show rapid enhancement, followed by a washout pattern, while benign lesions tend to behave differently.
And the AI can detect those patterns automatically.
Yes, and sometimes even more precisely than humans. The system processes large volumes of imaging data and identifies complex relationships that might be difficult for radiologists to detect visually.
Another thing I noticed in the paper is that the researchers use something called a foundation model.
Right? A foundation model is essentially a neural network that has been pre-trained on a massive dataset before being adapted for a specific task. In this case, the model was initially trained on thousands of MRI volumes and millions of image slices. This pre-training allowed it to learn general imaging features before focusing specifically on breast lesions.
That sounds similar to how large language models are trained.
Exactly. The idea is very similar. By learning from large amounts of data first, the model develops a broader understanding of patterns in medical images.
So how well did the AI perform in the study?
The results were quite impressive. The AI system achieved a high level of diagnostic accuracy when tested on new patient data. It also demonstrated significantly higher specificity than radiologists alone.
And specificity basically means correctly identifying benign cases.
Yes. In medical diagnostics, sensitivity refers to detecting disease when it is present, while specificity refers to correctly identifying cases where disease is absent.
So higher specificity means fewer false alarms.
Exactly. And that's critical in breast imaging because false positives often lead to unnecessary biopsies.
Did the study also evaluate how doctors perform when they use the AI as assistants?
Yes, and that was one of the most interesting parts of the study. The researchers conducted experiments where radiologists reviewed MRI scans both with and without the AI system.
And what happened?
When radiologists used the AI system as a decision support tool, their diagnostic accuracy improved. In particular, the number of false positive diagnoses decreased significantly.
That suggests that AI can act like a second opinion.
Exactly. Instead of replacing doctors, the system helps them make more informed decisions.
Another concern people often raise about AI in medicine is the so-called black box problem. Did the researchers address that?
Yes, they did. One of the key features of their system is interpretability. The AI generates visual maps that highlight the areas of the MRI image that contributed most to its prediction.
So doctors can actually see what the AI is focusing on.
Exactly. These heat maps allow radiologists to understand why the model classified a lesion as benign or malignant. That transparency is essential if AI tools are going to be used in clinical practice.
Because doctors need to trust the system before relying on it.
Absolutely. In medicine, decisions can have life or death consequences, so transparency is extremely important.
Were there any limitations mentioned in the study?
Yes. One limitation is that the model was primarily trained using one specific type of MRI sequence. The authors suggest that including additional imaging modalities, such as diffusion-weighted imaging, might further improve the model's performance.
That makes sense. More data usually leads to better models.
Exactly. Another limitation is that the study population was concentrated in certain hospitals, so further validation in other regions will be necessary.
Still, the results seem promising.
Very promising. If systems like this become widely adopted, they could significantly improve breast cancer screening and diagnosis.
And reduce the number of unnecessary biopsies.
Yes, that could benefit both patients and healthcare systems.
I imagine the psychological impact on patients is also significant.
Definitely. Being told that you might have cancer, even temporarily, can be extremely stressful. Reducing false positives could spare many patients from that emotional burden.
It's fascinating how AI is gradually transforming medical imaging.
It really is. Radiology is one of the medical fields where AI has the greatest potential impact because imaging data is highly structured and abundant.
Do you think AI will eventually replace radiologists?
Most experts don't think so. Instead, the future will probably involve collaboration between humans and AI.
So radiologists may become more like supervisors of intelligent systems.
Exactly. AI can handle repetitive analysis and detect subtle patterns, while doctors provide clinical context, judgment, and communication with patients.
That combination could lead to more accurate diagnoses overall.
Yes, and ultimately better outcomes for patients. Second article. In news from the BBC, it has been reported that experts are calling for tighter rules on AI toys for toddlers. A recent study found that these smart toys often misread a child's emotions. For example, when one toddler told a toy they were sad, the AI cheerfully replied, "I'm a happy little bot." Researchers warn that these confusing responses can be harmful, while kids are just learning important social skills. Just like we check toys for physical safety, experts say we now need to guarantee the psychological safety of these high-tech gadgets. So today we're going to talk about what this means for children, parents, and the future of technology in the toy industry.
That's a fascinating story, Catherine. When I was a kid, toys were pretty simple. Plastic dinosaurs, building blocks, maybe a stuffed animal that squeaked when you squeezed it. But now toys can actually talk to children and respond to them.
Exactly, and that's what makes this issue so interesting. These toys are powered by artificial intelligence, which means they can hold conversations and react to what children say.
But according to the study you mentioned, they don't always react in the right way.
Right? Researchers observed that AI toys sometimes misunderstand emotions or respond in ways that don't really make sense to children.
That example you mentioned earlier was striking. A child says, "I'm sad," and the toy responds with something cheerful about itself. That doesn't exactly provide emotional support.
Not at all. And the concern is that very young children are still learning how emotions work. They're learning empathy, social cues, and how to comfort others.
So if a toy consistently responds incorrectly, it could confuse them.
Exactly.
I guess the bigger question is, should toys even try to replace human interaction in the first place?
That's a good point. Some experts argue that toys should encourage imagination rather than simulate friendship.
When I was growing up, I remember pretending my stuffed animals could talk. But I knew it was just pretend.
Yes, that's an important distinction. With AI toys, the toy actually responds in real time, which can blur the line between imagination and reality.
And for toddlers especially, that line might already be fuzzy.
Exactly.
Another thing I wonder about is imaginative play. Did the researchers say anything about that?
They did. Some psychologists worry that if toys do too much of the thinking or talking, children might use their own imagination less.
That makes sense. If the toy provides all the dialogue and stories, the child might not create their own.
Right? Traditional toys often require children to invent characters and narratives.
Like building a whole world with Lego or pretending a cardboard box is a spaceship.
Exactly. That kind of play is actually very important for cognitive development.
But let me play devil's advocate here. Couldn't AI toys also have benefits?
Such as,
Well, imagine a toy that teaches children language, answers questions, or reads stories interactively.
that's true. Educational technology can be very helpful when designed well.
For example, language learning apps already use AI to practice conversations.
Yes, and those tools can be incredibly useful for older children.
So maybe the problem isn't the technology itself, it's how it's used.
I think that's exactly what many researchers are saying.
Another concern mentioned in the article was regulation. Apparently, there are very few rules for AI toys right now.
That's right. Toys have always been regulated for physical safety, things like choking hazards or toxic materials.
But psychological safety is a newer concept.
Exactly. Researchers argue that if toys interact emotionally with children, they should meet certain standards.
Almost like how educational TV shows are designed with child development experts.
Yes, something similar to that.
I'm also curious about parents' reactions. How do you think parents feel about these toys?
Many parents are probably excited by the technology at first. It seems innovative and educational.
But once they hear about the potential risks, they might become more cautious.
Exactly. Parents naturally want to protect their children, especially during those early developmental years.
Let me ask you something, Catherine. If you had a toddler, would you buy them an AI toy?
That's a tough question. I think I would be very careful about it.
Meaning?
Maybe I'd choose toys that encourage creativity, like puzzles, blocks, or art supplies, before introducing something powered by AI.
So, technology wouldn't be the first option.
Probably not for very young children.
I think I might feel the same way. Technology can be amazing, but early childhood seems like a time when human interaction is especially important.
Yes, children learn a lot by talking with parents, siblings, and friends.
And even by resolving conflicts with other kids on the playground.
Exactly. Those experiences teach empathy, negotiation, and emotional awareness.
Still, I can imagine that AI toys will become more common in the future.
Definitely. Technology rarely moves backward.
And companies are always trying to create the next big thing in the toy market.
That's why researchers are calling for clearer standards now, before these toys become widespread.
So in a way, society is facing a new kind of challenge.
Yes, we've already had to think about how smartphones and social media affect young people.
And now we're asking similar questions about AI.
Exactly. Every new technology forces us to rethink how we protect children while still allowing innovation.
You know, this discussion reminds me of science fiction stories from decades ago.
How so?
In many of those stories, robots interact with humans emotionally.
And now that idea is slowly becoming reality.
Exactly. Except instead of robots helping astronauts in space, they're sitting in children's bedrooms as toys.
That's quite a shift.
Before we wrap up, what do you think is the key takeaway from this story?
I think the main message is balance. AI technology can be exciting and useful, but when it comes to young children, we need to proceed carefully.
And that's why researchers are pushing for better rules and testing.
Exactly. Just as toys must be physically safe, they should also be psychologically safe for children who are still learning about the world.
Well said. Technology will continue to evolve, but understanding its impact on human development is just as important. Well, Catherine, today's discussion really showed how quickly artificial intelligence is moving into everyday life. On the one hand, the BBC article reminded us that AI technologies, especially those designed for children, raise real concerns about safety, privacy, and regulation. As these tools become more interactive and influential, experts are calling for clearer rules to protect young users.
Exactly. And on the other hand, the research paper we talked about shows the positive side of AI in medicine. The system they developed can analyze breast MRI images and significantly reduce false positive diagnoses, which means fewer unnecessary biopsies and less anxiety for patients. According to the study, the AI system even achieved much higher specificity than radiologists in some cases, and improved diagnostic consistency when doctors used it as support.
Right, and that's an important takeaway. AI doesn't necessarily replace experts. It often works best as a tool that assists them. In this case, it helped both junior and senior radiologists make more accurate decisions and reduced variability between readers.
So today's stories really highlight two sides of the same technology. AI can create new challenges that society has to regulate carefully, but it can also bring remarkable advances, especially in fields like healthcare.
Absolutely. The key question going forward is how we balance innovation with responsibility.
And that's something we'll definitely keep exploring in future episodes.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.